I initially thought it was just another sale or promo notice on my door, until the bolded word Euthanize caught my eye. The envelope was a pale orangish color, carelessly taped to the wood. A gust of wind had curled one corner, but the HOA seal still clung stubbornly to the flap, marked with that familiar, self-assured maroon ink. Rachel Alvarez was no stranger to these envelopes. Late fees, lawn violations, even a passive-aggressive complaint about her trash bins being visible from the street. But this one felt different, heavier, even before she tore it open. With a sigh, she peeled the paper off the door, balancing her coffee in one hand and pushing the door open with the other. Max was there instantly, his ears up, tail wagging slowly against the hallway wall. He had no idea. Rachel placed the envelope on the kitchen counter, eyeing it as if it might explode. She took a slow sip of her coffee, then slit the seal with a butter knife. The first word that jumped out at her wasn't even bolded. Euthanize. She read it again. The letter was cold, clinical, language carved from legal templates and zero emotion. It stated, in bureaucratic precision, that due to HOA regulations, her dog Max was identified as a banned breed, specifically a pit bull type, and therefore had to be removed from the premises within 7 days. If not, the HOA would take action, including coordinating with municipal animal services to enforce compliance, which included explicitly the right to seize and euthanize the animal. There was no hearing date, no appeal process, no explanation of who reported Max. Just a signature from the HOA president, Cheryl Dane, and a deadline. 7 days from receipt of notice. Rachel blinked twice, mouth dry. Max nudged her leg, sensing her stillness. She dropped to her knees and pulled him close, her fingers pressing into the familiar velvet of his ears. "It's okay," she whispered, though she didn't believe it. Max licked her cheek, oblivious to the weight now crushing her chest. He had no idea what that envelope meant, or how quickly his life had just been reduced to a checkbox on someone's enforcement spreadsheet. Rachel stood up slowly, letter still trembling in her hands. Her mind raced. There were so many things she could say, so many facts she could throw at them, but none of it would matter. Not yet. She walked over to the window and looked out at the quiet neighborhood. Picture-perfect lawns and freshly painted mailboxes. Somewhere behind one of those trimmed hedges, someone had decided Max didn't belong. And now, they were planning to kill him for it. "I wasn't going to let them take him," she said aloud, voice calm but tight. But I couldn't stop what was coming. Yet. Maple Ridge was the kind of neighborhood that sold itself on silence. Wide sidewalks lined with imported birch trees, lawns trimmed to regulation height, weekly landscaping crews that arrived with military precision. Children rode bikes in perfectly spaced driveways. Nothing ever seemed out of place, except for Max. Rachel had moved here 2 years ago after a chaotic stretch working long hours and living in a noisy apartment above a bar. This place was supposed to be a refuge. Peaceful, predictable, safe. Max had adjusted instantly. He loved the backyard, especially the corner near the jasmine bush where the sun hit just right in the afternoon. He'd stretch out there like royalty, rolling in the grass, tongue lolling. To Rachel, he wasn't just a dog. He was the only steady thing she had rescued in her chaotic life, and the only thing that had rescued her back. And even some of the neighbors grew to really love Max. They would see him walking and stop and say hello. She got him 5 years ago. Max had been found in a dumpster behind a burned-out building. Malnourished, burn marks on his back legs. A rescue group brought him in, and Rachel had been the first to fill out an adoption form. He was chipped, vaccinated, registered with the county, and certified as a therapy dog 2 years later. Not once had he ever shown aggression, not toward a human, not toward another animal, not even toward the squirrel that tormented him from the fence. So how could he suddenly be a threat? Rachel sat at her kitchen table that morning, HOA letter still open like a wound, and dialed the number listed at the bottom. A robotic voice answered. You have reached the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association. If this is a general inquiry, press 1. She pressed 2 for urgent matters. It rang 4 times, then voicemail. She left her name, address, and a calm, direct request for someone to call her back. She sent a follow-up email to the address on the HOA's website and CC'd the secondary contacts listed on the community portal. No one replied. That night, as she was locking up, she found a second notice, this time posted directly to her garage door. It wasn't in an envelope, just taped there, crooked and bold. Solution: to comply will result in immediate action. Rachel peeled it off slowly, her skin prickling. Were her neighbors watching her? Had someone filed the complaint anonymously? Was this personal or just petty? She turned slowly, scanning the houses across the street. Curtains twitched. Lights flicked off. Suddenly, the whole neighborhood felt like a stage, and she was standing dead center, alone in the spotlight. She took Max for a walk, but it didn't feel like a walk. It felt like surveillance. People she used to wave to didn't look up. Someone closed their garage door as she passed. Her sandals scraped the pavement a little louder than usual. Even Max seemed unsettled, his ears turning at each sound. When they got home, she locked both deadbolts. She sat down on the couch, Max's head in her lap, and stared at the letter again. Something about it felt off. Not just the tone, cold and robotic, but the way it skipped over everything that should have been there. No evidence, no process, no opportunity to respond. Rachel's instincts buzzed, but she didn't know if it was fear, anger, or both. All she knew was that whoever wrote this didn't expect to be questioned. I had no idea what they were preparing behind closed doors. Not yet, but soon she would. By the end of the week, something had shifted on the street. Neighbors who once waved from porches now glanced down at their phones. The couple next door, who had borrowed her ladder just last month, suddenly acted like they didn't recognize her. One woman Rachel had chatted with weekly at the mailbox pulled her dog away mid-conversation and mumbled something about being late. It wasn't just silence. It was deliberate. She didn't need to guess why. The letter hadn't stayed quiet. Someone had talked. Maybe it was the person who reported Max in the first place. Maybe it didn't matter. The message was clear. She was being isolated. It took 3 separate emails and 1 terse phone call to the HOA office before Rachel got a single sentence in response. The complaint was submitted anonymously and reviewed per policy. That was it. No detail, no justification, no one to face. She pulled up the Maple Ridge HOA bylaws from the website, 67 pages long, filled with mind-numbing clauses about holiday decorations, approved mulch types, and acceptable mailbox shapes. She scrolled slowly, eyes scanning for anything related to pets. There was a section on animal waste, another on leash laws, then, under section March 2nd, 14, barely a paragraph. Something about dangerous breeds. It was vague, referencing certain breeds historically associated with aggression, but never listing which ones, nor citing any legislation or local code to define it. That was the legal foundation they were using to kill her dog. The next HOA meeting was on a Wednesday night in the clubhouse at the end of the neighborhood. Rachel arrived early, printout of Max certifications in hand, his therapy dog license, his veterinary paperwork, his behavioral evaluations. She sat in the front row, clutching the folder like a shield. The board took their seats on a raised platform. Cheryl Dane sat center, white blazer, pearl necklace, clipboard in front of her like a weapon. She didn't smile. She didn't even blink when she saw Rachel. The meeting began with agenda items, budget approvals, pool maintenance, offense variance request. When they moved on to pet complaints, Rachel leaned forward. She raised her hand. Cheryl's voice was smooth, practiced. "We're not taking comments on that matter tonight." Rachel stood. I'm the owner of the dog in question. I think I deserve. This is not a public hearing, Cheryl snapped. Please take your seat. People shifted in their chairs. A few looked uncomfortable. No one spoke. Cheryl continued, as if reading from a menu. The board has reviewed the complaint, evaluated the risk to community safety, and voted unanimously to enforce breed restrictions moving forward. Affected homeowners will be notified. Rachel's heart pounded. You haven't even seen him. We don't need to, Cheryl said, smiling thinly. This is about community safety, not sentiment. The meeting rolled on. Her protests weren't entered into the minutes. Her questions weren't answered. She walked out, with the folder still in her hand, unopened. Max was now officially labeled a potential threat. No hearing, no evaluation, just the word of someone behind a closed door and a board that didn't want to hear anything else. The next morning an email confirmed it. The vote passed. Max had 7 days. They had full legal authority, at least they thought they did. The silence dragged on for days, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind of stillness that comes right before something breaks. Rachel kept expecting a knock at the door, a follow-up letter, an email, anything, but nothing came. She walked Max early in the mornings and late at night now, partly to avoid the neighbors, partly because she was afraid of what might happen if she didn't. Max sensed it too. He stuck closer, watched her more. He didn't bound toward the grass anymore. He stayed alert, like he was on duty. 3 full days passed since the HOA vote. No contact, no reply to her emails, no word from Cheryl Dane, just a void. And that made it worse. She kept replaying the words in her head. The vote passed. And with it, the threat that Max could be taken. But still, nothing. Then, on the 4th day, it came. No warning, no envelope, just a single sheet of paper folded and stuck between her storm door and the frame. She almost missed it on the way out for groceries, but there it was, bent slightly from the pressure of the door, fluttering in the breeze. She pulled it out with 2 fingers. Final notice of enforcement. The bold lettering made her chest tighten before she even read the rest. This document serves as the HOA's final directive for compliance. For HOA Section, March 2nd, 14, and pursuant to state-aligned policy regarding hazardous domestic animals, the prohibited pet on your premises must be surrendered within 72 hours of receipt. In the event of non-compliance, HOA representatives, alongside certified municipal partners, will be authorized to enforce immediate removal of the animal in question. No further warnings will be issued. No signature, no contact number, just one last line in bold. This matter is not eligible for appeal. Rachel stared at it, reading each word slowly, carefully, as if the language might rewrite itself if she blinked. Her hands shook, but not from fear, from fury. State-aligned policy? Certified municipal partners? She knew vague legal language when she saw it, designed to intimidate, not inform. She walked inside, set the letter on the table, and opened her laptop. She emailed the HOA. Again, subject: clarification and appeal request. Body: I am formally requesting documentation validating your enforcement authority. Please provide any relevant municipal or state statute number referenced in the attached notice. I am also requesting an appeal window or a hearing opportunity prior to the enforcement action. She hit send. 3 hours later, she received a 2-sentence reply. This matter is closed. No appeal is available. No greeting, no sign-off, no name. That was it. They were going to come for Max. And now the countdown had started. She didn't scream. She didn't break anything. She moved. She downloaded every document she had: Max's medical records, behavioral evaluations, adoption papers, licensing info, even his therapy dog certification. She scanned every page into a labeled folder on her desktop, and uploaded copies to 2 cloud drives and a USB stick. She installed 2 security cameras, one above the front door, one near the side gate, both set to record motion and upload automatically. She didn't post about it, didn't text, just moved in silence. She also reached out to 2 people, quietly. One was a contact from a previous life, someone who owed her a favor. The other worked in city government. She didn't say much, just asked for documentation on animal seizures and HOA coordination rules. She didn't use her full name, not yet. Rachel knew better than to make noise too soon. That night, Max didn't leave her side. He usually slept curled up at the base of the stairs, but he stayed near the door. His eyes stayed open longer. His breathing was heavier. He didn't bark. He just watched. Rachel didn't sleep. She sat on the couch, porch camera feed open on her phone. At 1:42 a.m., headlights crept slowly past the house. A white SUV, no markings, no plates visible from the side. It paused near the driveway just long enough to be noticed, then rolled on. She stayed seated, didn't move, just stared through the dark glass. Her phone vibrated with a motion alert, camera 1 triggered. She exhaled through her nose, steady. They were watching her, checking, testing her response. She reached down and ran her fingers over Max's head. He didn't flinch. "Ain't my baby." Downey was there, littering their possessions on the floor. I let them think that. The white SUV came back on a Tuesday morning. This time, it didn't drive by. It stopped. Rachel spotted it first through the slit in the living room blinds, the same place she'd watched it coast past in the dead of night just 3 days earlier. But now it was broad daylight, no hesitation, no pretense. It turned onto her street slowly, like it belonged there. The cheap magnetic stickers on the sides read Animal Control Partnership in block letters. Below that, in smaller print, acting in cooperation with Maple Ridge HOA. Rachel didn't move. She watched it idle for a moment, tires crunching against the curb as it settled in front of her house. Then the doors opened. Cheryl Dane was the first out, still dressed like she was hosting a real estate seminar. Blazer, clipboard, glossy hair too perfect for someone planning a seizure. Behind her, 2 men stepped out of the SUV. No uniforms. No municipal tags. Just matching khaki shirts and the stiff walk of people trying too hard to look official. Max stood at the window beside Rachel. He didn't bark. He just stared, ears forward, tail still. She turned to him and gave a soft nod. "Stay with me." Then she walked to the front door. By the time she opened it, they were halfway up the walk. Cheryl looked pleased with herself. "Mayo's Alvarez," she said, chipper. "We're here for the animal." Rachel didn't answer right away. Her hand rested on the doorframe. Her posture was calm, measured. The kind of calm you practice, not feel. "May I see your credentials?" she asked. The man on the left hesitated. The one on the right didn't stop moving. "We're acting under HOA authority," he said gruffly. Rachel kept her tone even. "Then I'll need to see something in writing, or ID. If you're here to enter my home and remove a licensed animal, I expect that to be documented." Cheryl stepped forward, tapping the clipboard with her polished nails. "This is the HOA's approved enforcement order. Voted and signed." Rachel raised a brow. "Signed by whom?" Cheryl didn't answer. The 2 men started forward again, one of them reaching toward the latch on the gate. Rachel didn't flinch, but her voice shifted. Firmer now, louder. "Before you go one step further," she said, "I need to inform you that this property is under active legal review by the state of..." That stopped them. Cheryl squinted. "Excuse me?" Rachel pulled a leather badge wallet from her inner coat pocket. She held it open just long enough for all of them to see. Gold. Embossed seal. State credentials. Official. "My name is Rachel Alvarez," she said. "I'm a senior attorney for the Department of Agriculture's Office of Animal Welfare Enforcement." Pause. Dead silence. Effective as of this morning, this address and this case are under state-level review for civil rights violations, false enforcement actions, and attempted unlawful seizure of a protected licensed animal. She stepped forward now, calm, clear, deliberate. And as of 8:46 a.m., this cease and desist order signed by District Judge Elaine M. Burke bars you from entering this property, making contact with this animal, or initiating any enforcement under HOA authority until the investigation is complete. She held out the sealed court document. The man on the left took it. His eyes darted from the paper to her badge, then to Cheryl. Cheryl's expression hadn't changed, but her voice had lost its edge. "This is some kind of stunt," she muttered. "You're bluffing." Rachel didn't blink. "You've already committed 4 violations in 5 minutes, and you've done it on camera." She pointed to the security camera above the porch. The red light blinked back like a quiet warning. "If you step inside that gate," Rachel continued, "you'll escalate this from civil investigation to criminal proceedings. I will file personally, and I won't stop with the HOA board. I'll name you." Cheryl opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The men didn't wait for her this time. They turned, walked back to the SUV. Cheryl lingered at the foot of the steps. She looked up at Rachel for a moment. Not with authority, with something closer to disbelief. Then she followed them. Rachel stood there until the SUV pulled away. Then she closed the door, slowly, deliberately. Max walked to her side and leaned against her leg, and ran a finger down his back. "You're okay," she whispered, but her eyes were still on the door. "They thought I was just another helpless dog owner. I let them think that. So, how did we get here?" While the HOA plotted in whispers and posted threats like they were parking tickets, Rachel Alvarez was doing something else. She was preparing for war, but not just to protect Max. She was preparing to defend every animal like him. Because Rachel wasn't just a woman with a dog. She wasn't just a homeowner with a folder of papers. She was a state-level attorney who had made it her life's work to fight for the voiceless. Rachel Alvarez served as a senior litigator for the State Department of Agriculture's Office of Animal Welfare Enforcement. Her job wasn't paperwork. It wasn't red tape. It was prosecution. She prosecuted illegal breeders who mutilated dogs for profit. She shut down shelters that euthanized healthy animals in secret. She exposed rescue scams that trafficked puppies across state lines. She led investigations into county-run kill shelters with falsified death logs. And she didn't do it from behind a desk. She did it in courtrooms, where abusers learned what it meant to face real justice. The moment Rachel received that HOA letter threatening to euthanize Max for being a banned breed, she didn't just see personal danger. She saw precedent. She saw the kind of abuse she'd battled her entire career, now knocking on her own front door. They thought it would work. They thought she'd roll over. Instead, she went to work. She filed a formal complaint with the state's Animal Protection Review Board before the HOA even knew she had a legal background. She submitted a sworn affidavit documenting every interaction, every vague threat, every violation of due process. She compiled case law, pulled prior abuse complaints against Cheryl's HOA leadership from public record, and had a judge reviewing her petition by the 5th day. And she kept quiet, because the people who try to hurt animals always count on one thing: no one fighting back hard enough to stop them. Rachel had built her entire life on proving them wrong. So when Cheryl Dane and her clipboard army walked up that path, Rachel didn't just show them a badge, but she showed them a wall. The wall that stands between cruelty and justice, between authority and abuse, between the people who love animals and the ones who think they can harm them without consequence. The cease and desist was signed by a judge who Rachel had once worked alongside during a felony animal cruelty trial. The court order cited 4 statutes, all designed to prevent exactly what the HOA tried to do: seize and destroy a dog based solely on breed and fear. The fallout was immediate. The board was suspended from all enforcement activity, pending review. Cheryl was named personally in a state-level investigation into abuse of power and violation of animal protection law. The HOA's insurer was notified of potential legal exposure in a civil suit, and Rachel, she didn't give interviews, she didn't gloat. She submitted a second report, this time requesting a statewide audit of breed discrimination clauses in HOA contracts. That request went straight to the department's ethics division, because this wasn't just about Max. This was about the next dog, the next shelter, the next family forced to choose between their pet and their home. Max slept by the door that night, but not because he was afraid. He was relaxed again, head on paws, breathing slow. He didn't know how close he'd come to being another statistic. But Rachel did, and she wasn't going to let that happen to anyone else's dog ever again. They didn't come back the next day, not the day after either. The white SUV never showed up again. For a while it felt like a win, but Rachel knew better. That wasn't retreat. It was silence. The kind of silence that meant something bigger was coming. Something slower. Paper instead of noise. And she was right. 4 days after the cease and desist order was served, Rachel received a letter, not from the HOA this time, but from the State Board of HOA Compliance. A complaint had been filed against her by Cheryl Dane. Allegations: abuse of authority, misuse of legal credentials, harassment of the board. Rachel went at once. Then she smiled, because now it was in her arena. She didn't respond emotionally. She didn't lash out. She filed a formal counterclaim through her office, citing legal breed discrimination, violation of due process, use of false or unenforceable legal threats, attempted unlawful seizure of a licensed therapy animal, and, most damning, bypassing mandatory exemption procedures outlined in the state animal welfare code. Within 48 hours, Cheryl received her own letter. Only this one wasn't from the HOA. It was from the state. Rachel had expedited the review by submitting her internal evidence, emails, notices, footage from her porch cameras. She didn't pull strings. She didn't need to. The facts were damning on their own. Soon, Cheryl found herself named as the respondent in a formal administrative hearing, no longer the accuser. The hearing wasn't flashy. No cameras, no jury. Just a room with a judge, a panel of ethics officers, and a wall of evidence thicker than Cheryl had ever seen. Rachel sat in the back row, calm, focused. She didn't testify. Her written affidavit spoke for itself. Cheryl tried to frame the whole incident as a misunderstanding, a misread by the board. She even blamed the men in khaki, said they'd acted on their own. But then came the footage. Rachel had it cued, her camera feed from that morning at the front door, the moment Cheryl stepped onto the porch, the moment she refused to show ID, the moment Rachel warned her, and Cheryl smirked, then laughed. The room was quiet when the video ended. The panel turned to Cheryl with unreadable expressions. Rachel didn't look at her. She didn't need to. By the end of the week, the ruling was issued. Cheryl was removed from her position as HOA president. The board's authority over pet enforcement was suspended indefinitely. A state-level review of all Maple Ridge HOA bylaws was ordered, and Rachel's complaint was validated in full. The letter Cheryl once taped to Rachel's door was now marked Exhibit B in an ethics file that would live in the state archive indefinitely. Rachel didn't hold a press conference. She didn't post online. She just walked Max. Same street, same sidewalk, but now people looked up when she passed. Some nodded. One or two even muttered an apology. She didn't need them to say anything. Max was safe. That was enough. And still, this wasn't just about Max. As she stood in her backyard, watching him nap beneath the jasmine bush, Rachel opened her laptop. She had one more report to write. Because Maple Ridge wasn't unique. Other HOAs were doing the same thing, just quieter. just slicker, and Rachel had just exposed how easy it was to break the silence. She leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowed, fingers ready. "I wasn't just saving Max," she whispered. "I was auditing the entire HOA. Within a month, the investigation widened. Maple Ridge was no longer just a neighborhood, it was a case study. The HOA board was stripped of all pet enforcement powers. Cheryl Dane was formally removed and now faced a full misconduct review by the state ethics board, with charges pending under both housing and animal welfare statutes. But it didn't stop there. Rachel started receiving letters, emails too, from people in other towns, other neighborhoods. Some were from veterans whose service dogs had been labeled disruptive, some from elderly women whose cats were seized during compliance sweeps. Others had simply been scared into silence. One woman from another HOA wrote, "I had to give up my pit mix last year. I didn't fight back, I wish I had. Reading about what you did, I just wish I'd known it was possible." Rachel didn't just reply. She built something. She called it the Breed Justice Initiative, a legal coalition designed to investigate, challenge, and overturn HOA breed bans across the state. She compiled case law, exposed misuse of authority, and began working with legislators to draft a bill that would make it illegal to discriminate against dog breeds in housing associations without hard evidence of behavior. It wasn't about headlines. It wasn't about revenge. It was about the next Max. The ones without tags. The ones whose owners didn't know what to do. The ones who got labeled dangerous without ever baring their teeth. Rachel knew the numbers. Thousands of dogs, every year, put down because someone saw a square head or a muscular frame and decided they weren't safe. Not anymore. Because one HOA had pushed too far and picked the wrong target. And Max? He still curled up beside her desk every night. Same tail wag. Same soft eyes. Same slow breathing as he drifted off. He'd never know how close he came. And Rachel would never let it happen again. She looked down at him, sleeping with one paw across her foot. "They tried to destroy my peace," she whispered. "But they woke up the wrong dog owner." If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss the next one. And if you've ever fought for your pet or wished someone had, drop your story in the comments below.